everyone, welcome to this week's video blog. We're back from KMIO in Cusco now. We're doing some data analysis this week and some strategic planning for the upcoming year. And because we don't have fieldwork this week, we had the chance to sit down with our co-founder and managing director Chris Kirkby. Chris Katola talked to him about the history of Fauna Forever and the intern program. And as you might expect, Chris Kirkby had a lot to say about all of it. So this blog will be a little bit longer than usual, but we hope you enjoy it.
I'm here with Chris Kirkby, the co-founder and managing director of Fauna Forever, and we're here to ask him some questions about the history of the organization. So it's been around for over 20 years. Can you give us a bit of an idea of like exactly when you got here, when it started, and sort of what caused you to found the organization?
Good question. Well, I've been here in Peru since 1995, so that's 24 years ago. I actually first came to the rainforest as a volunteer myself. I was a resident naturalist at one of the sort of research stations, come ecotourism lodges, helping to do research on ants and termites, and then in my spare time, taking tourists out, showing tourists around the rainforest at the very beginning. And then, having been in Tampapara in the rainforest for maybe 6 or 7 months, I then began to get invited to meetings in Puerto Maldonado about sort of conservation actions, research, seminars, etc. And so I started to get to know more and more people involved in research and conservation back then. And there was one particular meeting that I went to towards the end of 1995, having been there almost a year, where there was a big meeting about the future of a protected area. And there were a number of research questions that the government wanted people to answer, or organizations to answer, in order to help determine where the national park and the reserve would eventually be. And the research question that I really found very interesting was this sort of impact of ecotourism on wildlife. So what I decided to do, having sort of gone through all of those research questions and talked to many people in Maldonado and colleagues at the various research stations and ecotourism lodges where I worked, we decided to set up this project called the Fauna Forever Tampapara project, which was basically trying to determine what the impact of humans, tourists running around the rainforest, what their impact might or might not have on wildlife, particularly mammals, amphibians, reptiles, birds, etc. And all this information that we would generate over the course of like a 2 or 3 year period would be channeled to the government in order for them to determine whether or not tourism as an activity, an economic activity, both inside the national park and reserve, whether or not it needed to be managed carefully in some way or not. Because there was a lot of ecotourism growth, and they thought they would grow even more, and indeed it has. Over the last 20 odd years, we started off barely 5,000 or 6,000 tourists, and now we have 60,000 tourists coming to Tampapara.
And it's one of the busiest areas for tourism in Peru, correct?
Yes, I think it's number 3 on the list. We have Machu Picchu, we have Caracas on the coast, and then we have Tampapara here in the rainforest. So yeah, it's very, very busy in terms of number of visitors that it gets from all over the world every year.
Well, after listening to Chris talk, you can see why all of us here at Fauna Forever are very proud to work for an organization with such a long history of doing conservation work here in Peru. Now, I think I can speak for all of the coordinators here at Fauna Forever when I say that one of the best parts of this job is getting to work with interns from across the globe. And I wanted to take the chance to speak to Chris and ask him a bit more about the history of our internship program, and also about what he hopes our interns gain from working with us here at Fauna Forever. So when Fauna Forever started, it was a relatively small group of people, obviously, but now we take interns in from all over the world. Can you talk a bit about how that transitioned, how that evolved, and also the role that these interns have with us when they're here?
Again, volunteers and interns are very important for us now. And indeed, when the original sort of ecotourism impact study on wildlife was undertaken in the late 90s, we realized that we needed a lot more people to help us get the research, the baseline databases done. And although we had funding from foundations and grants from abroad, we really didn't have enough in order to get everything done in the time frame allowed. So I put the word out that we were looking for, field assistants to help us, on the mammal team, on the bird team, on the herb team, etc. And actually, before we knew it, we had loads and loads of applicants wanting to come and spend. At that time, it was a minimum of 3 months that you had to spend with us, without leaving, in the forest. And we asked them whether they could cover their own costs, because we had enough to cover all the equipment costs, all the salary costs, all the sort of main logistical stuff, but we probably didn't have enough to feed everybody. So back then we asked students who came from the States, from France, from the UK, from all over the place, whether they could cover their accommodation and their food costs. They all said yes, and we had droves and droves of people coming. They, again, without them, we probably wouldn't have been able to gather the depth of information that we have on wildlife, because we were able to have 6 different teams working all at the same time on these 3 taxonomic groups. Thousands of kilometers of transects for mammal work, for example, were achieved with them, which we probably wouldn't be able to repeat today. At the moment, we've gone through maybe 1,000 volunteers and interns from all over the place. They tend to spend shorter periods with us now, and so instead of the 3 months that we had originally, they come for maybe between 2 to 6 weeks, seems to be the average. But again, they bring a whole host of skills and experience with them, which also helps us efficiently manage these projects.
Okay, so obviously from our perspective, when interns are here, it really helps us with our field work, which is great for us. But from an intern's perspective, what would you say that they get out of it?
So one thing that I, as the sort of managing director of Fauna Forever, want to make sure interns learn is obviously the whole list of the protocols, the methodologies that we use in Madre de Dios, because many students don't really get that much hands-on in the field experience, particularly in a rainforest environment. Most of our interns come from the north, and there's not much rainforest out there. And many of them do want to be involved in conservation work in the tropics in the future. So getting to know these protocols and methods and how they really work is important. Getting skilled as to how to identify species is also key, and that's why we have coordinators who are experienced and are able to teach these species identification techniques to them too. Also, the data that we collect and that interns and volunteers collect, that's also available for people to publish themselves if they want to. And we're very open and very keen on particularly students willing to analyze their data and ideally publish that data as well. We have huge amounts of data, and some of it's been published, but there's still lots more that needs to be published, and master's students and PhD students can definitely use this data and publish it.
So that's it for this week's video blog. We hope you enjoyed it. We're going back to the jungle tomorrow, and we're very excited to go back to our research. Remember to check our Instagram @FaunaForever and our website faunaforever.org.